keep up with. Sad.
What's up, short timer? How you doing? I'm doing well.
Okay.
Scoot over. You got it. Hey, Alicia.
All right, Mr. Herbert, you have two working mics. If y'all will each share the two of them, that hopefully will do you. So I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Herbert to introduce his team and tell us if the budget will allow you to serve the people of Nashville in the way you want to, and if there are needs, let us know what they are, and we'll make note and do our best.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate that very much. I'm Bill Herbert. I'm the Director of Metro Codes. I have with me here today, I've got Byron Hall, Assistant Director, down here on this side. I have Alicia Barabuz. She is our Finance Director. And Emily Lamb, who is our Deputy Director. In the back, I've got Brady Rich, who is our Development Services Assistant Director. And to his right is Assistant Director Bill Penn, and he is over our Property Standards Division. Madam Chair, I'm happy to report that the Codes Department can operate within the Mayor's proposed operating budget. I'd like to thank Mayor Cooper. I'd like to thank Kristen Wilson, Kelly Flannery, and Tom Edelman. We certainly appreciate the support of the Mayor's office and the Finance Department. I'd be remiss not to thank my entire staff, all of whom work tirelessly to keep Nashville's buildings safe and Nashville's properties clean. This year, we responded to over 29,000 building and property violation complaints that were submitted via the hub, via telephone and email, and we responded to countless inquiries regarding zoning and short-term rental issues. Our mission statement can be found in your book, but in short, Codes issues construction and use-related permits and performs safety-related inspections. More specifically, we administer and enforce Title 16 of the Metropolitan Code that relates to buildings, construction, and exterior property areas. We also administer Title 17 of the Metropolitan Code, which is the zoning code, and that governs the use of property as well as the size, height, and the location of buildings. Despite the challenges faced since the pandemic's inception in 2020, we have continued to find silver linings and opportunities to improve our services. We were the first department within Metro to utilize a rental car program for our inspection vehicles. As a result, every inspector now has a car. Any car that needs service is immediately replaced with another. There's no downtime. With their laptops, each inspector can download their inspections for the day from the parking garage and without having to come into the office. This saves countless man hours and has reduced our inspection turnaround times to next day service virtually across the board and producing an overall cost savings to Metro. Due to the need to maintain social distancing, we've modified our processes and have customized we have customizations to CityWorks and the e-permit system so that licensed contractors can now submit applications for their building permits electronically. When the application's been received and approved by the various departments, the permits can be paid for and also issued electronically. Also, now customers can also pay for both landlord registrations and short-term rental permits online. I don't want this wonderful technology to overshadow the fact that our employees provide essential services. And that means that we have been serving the public from the beginning of the pandemic throughout its subsequent surges. We've been in office from the very beginning and have remained that way. Earlier this year, our electrical division was featured in the Metro ITS CityWorks News Spotlight for its process improvements. This initiative included adding permit data field to provide clarification for customers and adding NES release processes into the permit workflow for our inspectors. These changes have saved valuable time and effort for all parties involved. I'm pleased to say that the electrical division is also in the planning stages for a pilot program to conduct virtual inspections for non-critical installations such as low voltage inspections, HVAC replacements, open ditch and slab inspections. This program will free up valuable time for our inspectors, allowing them to focus on critical inspections. Now for the current fiscal year, I'd like to provide some projections as to how we expect codes will finish this year. We expect to come in under budget by year end. We will again achieve cost savings while faced with unexpected increases from emergency events from this previous year. On the revenue side, year to date, we've collected over $27.5 million. This exceeds expenses year to date by over $17 million. We anticipate revenue collections of over $31 million by year end. This is a $6 million increase over our FY22 annual revenue projection. For FY22, we project that we will issue nearly 16,000 building permits, which is more than either FY21 or FY20. We further project that the value of the permits, that is the construction value, through the end of this fiscal year will once again set an all-time record and exceed $5.6 billion. For reference, FY20 construction value came in at 4.6, FY21 is at 5.3, and we expect to hit 5.6. Since 2000, the size of the department has remained relatively unchanged. In 2000, we had 107 full-time employees. Today, we have 126 full-time employees. All the while, the value of Nashville's construction growth has skyrocketed from $1.3 billion to over $5.3 billion. In short, the value of construction growth has increased by 308% in 22 years, while the codes department staffing level has grown by only 18%. A consultant study done in 2018 recommended 6.5 property standards inspectors for every 100,000 citizens. With Nashville's over 700,000 citizens, that's around 45 inspectors. We have 22. The FY23 recommendation of 3 property standards inspectors and 1 chief puts us over the halfway mark and is definitely moving the needle in the right direction. Over $1.7 million is recommended for our budget in FY23, and for this, we are very grateful. We are truly grateful for the 35 recommended positions in the upcoming budget. The FY23 recommendations are essential and are supported by our independent consultants. These positions will help us to execute and expand the delivery of our core functions and for the improvement of our neighborhoods and our communities. As you may know, my last day is June 3rd. Emily Lamb, to my right, that will be her last day as well. It has been both an honor and a privilege to work for the Metropolitan Council and for the Mayor's office over the last 10 years. I was first serving as your zoning administrator and then as the director for the Department of Codes and Building Safety. It was a very difficult decision to decide to move on, but there's comfort in knowing that the department is left in very capable hands. Byron Hall, this afternoon, and just very recently, within the last couple of hours, was told that he would be taking over as the new interim director for the Codes Department. So I'd like to introduce Byron to you. Mayor Cooper graciously offered the position to Byron. He graciously accepted, and we at the Codes Department wish him the best of luck. Byron is so very capable. He is so knowledgeable. Byron has been with the department for, 23 years, thereabouts? 25 years. He knows our processes. Brian is very reasonable and is just a gem of a person. You are left with just the best person ever.
Thank you.
So, with that, I would like very much to thank all of the dedicated people that work for the Codes Department. I would like especially to thank everybody that's up here with me today. And with that, if there's any questions, we'd be happy to try to answer them.
Thank you so much, and we are sorry to see y'all go. We've been through a lot together, y'all, so those are more big shoes to fill. So as Councilmember Benedict pointed out, we've got some great folks leaving in the presentations we're having today. We do have some questions. I'll start with Councilmember Bradford.
Thank you, Chair. Going through the at a glance, and I was planning on asking about where y'all are needing staffing, and you kind of answered that with saying we are at 22, we need about 45 for property standards staff. Looking at the budget, you've got one, looks like chief, and 3 FTEs for property standard inspectors. Are those 4 FTEs already included in the 22 that you referenced, or are those additional to the 22 you say that you currently have?
Oh, these will be in addition to.
Yes, those are in addition.
So with these 4 positions funded in this budget, you go from 22 to 20, I can't do math right now, 26.
Yes, correct.
Okay. You mentioned some of the stuff you've already done to improve efficiency and save man hours. Are there other things that you're working on in the department to help streamline and make the process more efficient from a technology basis? Kind of help with, a one-stop shop for people who are wanting to pull permits instead of have to, I go pull a permit and then I have to go take it to the different departments. Are y'all still working on making that where I go to the permits, I pull the permit, everything's done on the back end, and then I get you're good to go?
We are constantly modifying our processes, and I think that's one thing that this department has had to do because we're relatively short-staffed. So when COVID hit, we had to become very, very flexible, and I think we did a pretty good job doing that. With that, we stayed flexible. We stayed amenable to all suggestions that come into us, both from the public, but really from our own staff members who, they're doing the jobs. And when they identify a way that we can do things more efficiently, we look at those very, very carefully. And we have found a lot of great ways that we can expedite our processes based upon the recommendations of our employees. So we are constantly staying nimble. We'll try things. Some things work, some things don't. But if we're all about trying to do everything possible to make it easier on the public in every instance that we can.
I appreciate that. And I just want to add as a comment, I've stressed over the last few years I've been on the council that the city made a lot of sacrifices when the economy went down in the mid-2000s. And, as the city's grown and we've invested in other parts of the city, we've not really invested in the departments who've had for nearly a decade now had to cut costs, cut positions, freeze positions. And so I'm really glad to see that we're finally, with this budget specifically, starting to reinvest in those departments who've sacrificed over the last decade while the rest of the city's grown. And hopefully this trend will continue. We can get your department and every other department to the staffing levels that the city really requires. So thank y'all.
I need to send a shout out to Keith Durbin and Amy Neal with IT, because without them, we would not been able to do what we do. We would not been able to keep up. They are just the best. Thank you, Keith and Amy.
We'll pass that on to them. Thanks. Vice Chair Benedict.
Thank you, Chair. Excuse me. So when we first met, when I started here in 2019, I said, you're a money-generating department. How can your revenue-generating department? How can we staff up? I'm thrilled to see 35 new employees coming to you on this, because $5.5 billion is a significant investment in our city. The question that I have is, when the civil, this is about employee pay, and it's really a question that we could ask every department. How does it impact our employees when civil service recommends a 5% COLA and a budget comes out with only 4%? I sent you a tough one. I'm sorry, Bill. I'm
Okay.
curious about employee, yeah.
So our employees work very, very hard. They are very, very dedicated. We're a relatively small department considering what we do. Our people are overworked. They just are. And so if there's any ability to help them with compensation, it is richly deserved. And that's just about the best way I know to answer it. Yeah, go ahead, Emily.
One thing too is that earlier this year, we contacted HR and asked them to do a pay study specifically for for the positions in our department. Our inspectors are paid less than the surrounding jurisdictions. Some of our administrative staff are paid at a level that we thought deserved a pay study. So HR is, they have accommodated that request and they're in the middle of doing a pay study. So that will, we hope, help in addition to the 4% recommendation.
Do we know when that'll be finished?
They're in the process of it right now. I don't know what the timeline is. I had some conversations with them just last week on it, so I know that they are in the process of it. And again, we hope that that will help in addition to the 4%.
When
Thank
that,
you.
I'm sorry, Chair.
Go ahead.
When that study comes out, will we be able to, with this budget, will we be able to implement the findings immediately, or will it wait until the next
I believe
budget?
that will have to go, because it'll be part of the pay plan, it will require Civil Service Commission approval, so it won't be anything that's immediate. But then I believe if this commission approves it, then it will be implemented.
Okay, thank you.
Good to know. Thank you so much. Councilmember Gamble.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you all for being here and all the work that you are doing to try to get us at the level of staffing where we need to be. I also appreciate the addition of property standards staff, getting us at least a little bit closer to half of what we need. My question is in regards to the building permits inspectors. You are looking to hire 9 FTEs there. 2 questions. What is the current number of FTEs that you have for building permits, and how does this add to that? And how does that compare with the city of our size, as you mentioned, with the property standards staff? And, well, answer that one. I'm sorry, I just got my second one.
We have 9 right now, and then we're adding 1 per the study, but we're also adding other mechanical gas inspectors, plumbing, electrical, but for now, just 1 to the 9 we already have currently for building, specifically building inspectors.
So you have 9 currently, and you're adding 9, or that?
Adding just 1.
Oh, adding just 1. Okay, so that'll get us 10. And how many should we have for a city of our size?
I am not sure that number, but that's another study that has to happen, so.
Councilmember Gamble, the number of FTEs that we requested specific to our inspections divisions are based on a study that some outside consultants did. They compared us to peer cities to see how many they have versus how many we have, and also compared our workload and the estimated time and the best business practice for employee to spend on each specific job duty. So the request that we made, the 9 that I think that you're referencing include our building and trades inspectors, and that was based on the consultant's recommendations, again, comparing us in part comparing us to peer cities.
Great. And my second question is, do you anticipate any problems filling the positions, as we've heard from other departments, issues with finding staff? Do you anticipate any problems filling these positions?
Yes, we do. And just a quick follow-up on the last question. I think the reason that you see a relatively low number of inspectors overall is because we've adjusted our processes, and now our inspection turnaround times are generally next day service across the board with our building inspection division. And really, almost all of our divisions are almost next day turnaround service. So that's the reason for a relatively low number. Also, what was that second question?
Can we fill them?
Yeah, it is a problem filling positions. The construction industry in Nashville is booming, and it's difficult to compete with the pay rates and scales from the private industry. Then there's also the issue of when we hire people, we get them good and trained, and then they are hired away by the private sector. So it's difficult to get them, and then once we get them, it's difficult to keep them.
Is there anything, short of, we've talked about the COLA increase, is there anything that you all are working on, the discussions about increasing the scale for pay as a way to recruit and retain more inspectors as well?
Yeah, go ahead, Emily.
That, we have spoken with central HR and they're in the middle of doing the pay study for the specific job descriptions that are specific to codes. And so we're just waiting for that to come out. And, you know, if it comes out and recommends higher wages and the commission approves it, then certainly those would be implemented. But we have done that as an answer or response to attempting to compete with the private sector and get good quality employees who would stick around.
Thank you. Councilmember Johnston.
Hi, thank you. A lot of my questions were sort of answered. I do want to say that codes is, if not the top, definitely the top 2-3 departments that is the most well-run department that I personally don't ever have a problem with or question. So thank you for that, number one. I also want to be on the record as saying that codes a lot of times gets thrown under the bus as far as building permit processes, even though, because they're the sandwich. They're the start and they're the end, but there's a lot of stuff in the middle that can go wrong or get lost, and it's not necessarily code's fault. So I just want to say that. As far as, I'm so glad to see you guys getting 35 FTEs. I'm wondering if in the property standards staff requests, are any of those, because I had talked with you, Emily, about this before, are any of those for nighttime inspectors specifically to deal with, you know, we've got short-term rental issues that are typically having problems at night, parking on the lawn when people get home from work, that type of thing. Is that something that is in this budget, or could we consider?
I think it's something you can consider. It is not in this budget. And the concern is for the safety of those inspectors who would be working at night. Our inspectors inspect private property. Going onto somebody's property at night could be inherently dangerous. That's our big concern. Is it something that could be addressed? Yes, I think it could be addressed, but with those qualifications.
Yeah, I think I would like for the council to consider that. I think there's a lot of property standards things that you can see without even having to get out of your vehicle. Cars parked on lawns, if you can hear music coming from or whatever party would be going on, issue at an STR. So I would like to look at that. If somebody could tell me maybe how many FTEs and what that fiscal note would be to see if we can add that to it, keeping in mind for everyone that's watching that codes is a revenue positive. And you can look back at the history and see the more people we hire, the more money we make because we're able to process things and get those fees into the account. So if I could get that, I think that would be helpful, because I think that's a lot of people's frustrations is that when a codes inspector comes around and, for example, I keep on going to cars parked on lawns just because for whatever reason that's going on in my district right now. It's not happening during the day because they're at work. It's when they come home at night or over the weekend and things like that. So I would like to look at that. And then I also want to end with saying I'm so sad to lose you guys. I'm excited for you, but thank you for all that you have done for so many years. Codes is a phenomenal department, and just we are in debt to you for sure.
Thank you very much. Really appreciate that, Council Lady. If we have specific addresses for nighttime concerns, we will address them. So if it is a very specific address, cars parking on lawn at night at this address, we can handle those kind of one-offs. So if you get those, please let us know. We can address those after hours. But just having a unit, if you will, that operates fully at night, that's not under the current budget.
I'm going to take another point of privilege and add to that. Maybe if we could just have one night a week, or maybe we can just do it in the winter when it's dark at 4 o'clock or something. I think people would just appreciate being able to do it sometime. It's not an ongoing, and I would add lighting to that as well. So I think the request was for information on the cost. You had mentioned at one point that there had been a unit that was paired with fire department or something, and also the sexually oriented business inspector had some system that made it feel safe. If there's just information y'all can provide us on what it would take to do it in a way that y'all are comfortable with, even if it's just one day a week, that would be helpful information. Thank you
We
for
can
that.
do that, and Councilmember Stiles is
Great.
looking into that.
Okay, thank you. And Councilmember Suara.
Thank you, Chair, and I echo what everyone has said. Thank you for your many years of services and for the work that is done. As an at-large, I don't deal with codes much, so I'm glad that Councilmember Johnston said what she said, because I get the complaints about we didn't get our permits and stuff on time, so I'm glad we have that. So I'm also glad that we get the 35 additional FTEs so that it address the backlog and things like that. So the question that I wanted to ask, I'm consistent with always looking at budget and year-to-date and actuals. That's how I look at budget. And I always feel like going from budget to budget sometimes is very misleading without knowing what the actuals year-to-dates are. In looking at your budget, two things which is very interesting to me is that despite the fact that you're adding 35 new people, your operating expenses in almost all the categories remain flat. And I thought that's quite interesting. Then on the other hand, your other expenses historically is been about 500,000, but last year was the first time that you increased it to $1 million. But looking at actual again to date, the expense is only at 700,000, but I see another bump in that line item. So would you please, keeping it flat and not asking for money, I'm not complaining, I'm just saying that with new people, don't you need money for operations? And then that other expenses line, would you explain what that line is specifically and why the additional increase?
We try to be as conservative as possible, and do the best we can. So this, basically, other expenses, the bump you'll see is for vehicle rentals. That is in that category. So which every inspector we get, that's gonna be about $6,000 a year. So that's why you'll see the increase there, because the additional inspectors for this year. Otherwise, it's just office supplies, just as conservative as we can be.
Appreciate that. Councilmember Nash, did you raise your hand? Yes, you're recognized.
Just an FYI, I had a nighttime issue over some lighting issues and let Mr. Penn know about it, and it got handled. But the one-off, we hadn't addressed. And then, I got to say too, I'm still sad over Corrine West retiring, and now you two. It's we'll miss you, and you've done a great job.
Thank you so much.
Councilmember Henderson.
Thank you, Chair. Of course, I have to add my thanks and appreciation to Director Herbert and Ms. Lamb. To Chair Allen's point, we've all been through a lot over these last few years. And when I came into office, I was working on some major Title 17 legislation with expanding the sidewalk requirements. And I'm so grateful because so much of that is on the back end. It's the implementation of that Title 17 legislation, which it can be challenging. I'm looking at your added positions, also kind of in a policy implementation space, and seeing 3 new urban forestry positions. So I'm very glad to see those. And I just wanted to ask, kind of, where are we now? Because I think we were at 2, then we were down to 1. So what are we contemplating here from an administrative standpoint? Is there still a urban forester and then 2 support, or can you tell me specifically how that's structured, please, or that's anticipated?
You want to take it?
Council Lady Henderson, we've asked for the 3 urban foresters to help with the increased, with more development necessarily comes more tree reviews and requirements. So part of it is to help with that. Stefan Kivett is the urban forester in that he has the seniority and the expertise and has been here. He's a supervisor of that division. He has 1 other employee underneath him who is also classified as an urban forester, reports to and works with Stefan. These 3 that we're requesting will work alongside Jonathan Wyatt. So there will be 4 urban, Stefan is the urban forester, and then 4 urban foresters underneath Stefan.
Great. So 5 total
Correct.
in that group.
That's right.
And I think, it may come up through questions to NDOT or to Water Services because, so often there's kind of that convergence in development services, the stormwater piece, especially as we've added street tree requirements. And so I know we started with those just in centers because we wanted to kind of get our legs underneath us. That's really kind of on the NDOT side because it's in the public right of way. But I'm just mindful as we expand our tree requirements or otherwise that we're really staffing into that group. So do you all feel like this is getting to this level is kind of meeting past needs from previous legislation, or would you anticipate, I guess, can you just sort of speak to that? Are we just catching up now to kind of cover everything, or are we being sort of prospectively looking ahead?
Maybe we're being slightly prospective, looking ahead. Stephen has needed help, and we got Jonathan Wyatt. He's been a tremendous help. They desperately need more. There's, as you know, there's a lot going on out there, and trees and landscaping is tremendously important and has received a lot of attention and focus lately. These positions are definitely needed for Stephen and his staff.
Great. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Radford.
Thank you, Chair. There was one last question that I had. Going through the FTEs, a lot of them state they are partial year funding for some of these FTEs. Can you kind of explain, for the layman, what partial year funding means and why they're not like, does this mean we're getting them for full year or just part of the year?
Just half year, because we can't immediately hire on July 1, so this is just us trying to be conservative again and hopefully get the other half of the funding next year. We hope to ramp up and have all 35 filled by December, January, but that's in a perfect world. So,
Okay, thank you.
half funding this year, half funding next year.
Good question. Councilmember Pulley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think Councilmember Gamble stole the lion's share of my question, but as a follow-up to the question on the personnel, we have a lot of FTEs to fill, and they're going to be difficult. It would, be good if there's any advice that you have for us to help you fill those positions. It certainly would be very welcome and sooner rather than later as we move forward, because we're all having problems with these labor issues. And also, I'm going to resist joining the love fest that Councilmember Johnston started, and I couldn't help but note the irony of the coach director and the deputy director who are leaving us for the private sector commenting on how difficult it is to keep personnel and train them up and then leave for the private sector. So now that we've got you guys trained up, we thank you for leaving us.
How do you respond to that, actually?
know,
Point well taken, touche.
Maybe
Yeah.
that pay plan will have enough.
And 2 of my honorary constituents, Patrick and Charlie Lamb, also wanted me to ask Deputy Director Lamb if she's satisfied leaving us with permanently known as the Deputy Director as opposed to potentially the Director.
How do you answer that one?
I am satisfied that codes is being left in fantastic hands. Byron will do a great job as interim director for as long as he serves in that position. I am very bittersweet about leaving the codes department, was not looking to leave. I had my sights on continued growth within Metro, but opportunities that come along that are better for your family, you owe it to your family to give them a try.
Albeit short, I was really pleased to see that cat get a hold of your tongue.
It doesn't happen very often.
Councilmember Benedict.
Thank you, Chair. Just one quick follow-up question on that pay plan. Is that is HR taking that to the Civil Service Commission, or how will the council be able to review that?
That's something I will look into and get back to you. To the best of my understanding, HR will take that to the Civil Service Commission, but I will, because that's something that they handle and they work alongside with the commission, but I will certainly follow up on that and get back to you so that you
Sounds
have
great.
a
Thank you.
definite answer.
All right.
Or hand it off to someone else. Thank you. Any other questions? All right, I think these guys deserve a standing ovation as well. Thank you all so much. That concludes codes. Thank y'all so much for letting us give y'all a hard time while we thank you for your service. And we'll